Welcome to Building People, Companies, and Careers, brought to you by AccruePartners. I'm Amy Pack.
And I'm Patty Comer. We're your host on this journey through the vibrant business landscape in the Queen City.
This podcast is an extension of our mission statement at AccruePartners, where we have spent over 20 years fostering connections and building relationships.
Whether you're a client, candidate, or business influencer in Charlotte, this podcast is for you.
We are immensely grateful for your support throughout our journey, and now through this podcast, we're excited to share the stories that have defined our path.
So let's dive in.
Let's do it. Welcome back to Building People, Companies, and Careers, brought to you by AccruePartners. I'm your host, Amy Pack. Here at AccruePartners, we are passionate about connecting with clients, candidates, consultants, and thought leaders who are shaping the business landscape, not just here in Charlotte, but across the Carolinas. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to have a special guest joining us, Lauren Hawk, an employer branding strategy consultant who is currently deployed at one of our clients. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy.
Yes,
So
I'm
great to be here.
so excited to have you, one in our new office space.
Which is gorgeous.
Well, thank you. But it's been so exciting to hear about your journey the last, what has it been, 9 months?
Just about. Yeah, we're just under 9 months.
Okay, so to give a little bit of context to our audience, I was talking to a client late one Friday afternoon, early evening, and she is a global director of TA, was struggling with some recruiting initiatives, more specifically in the field versus corporate, didn't know what to do about it. And it seemed that there was this really big gap. So I shared with our client that we had done something similar with another company years ago. When I say years, like 5 or 6 years ago. So I went home that evening, put some thoughts together and sent it to her and said, hey, we really need to find a marketing professional who wants to learn the employment space and really take their talents and apply them into recruitment, talent acquisition, employment branding. And within a couple of days, we started executing the search, and here we are today. So that's the exciting part about what we do. And I'd love to hear from you a little bit about your career journey, and then we'll go into the engagement that you're on.
Sure. Yeah. So it's interesting and non-traditional. I always knew that I liked storytelling. I was really good with people. I was interested in the field of communicating, in being in front of people and telling stories. So I actually started in college as a theater major, and that lasted for less than a semester. Because it turns out storytelling isn't as fun when you're in front of people and they're looking at you and you're having to play a part. So I quickly switched over to communications and public relations, which was kind of the back end. It's instead of telling someone else's story, you get to figure out what story you want to tell for a client, a person, whoever it may be. So once I switched to communications, public relations, marketing, it was like instant perfection. I loved it from square one. I graduated from college, got a job in public relations right away. And then slowly over time, as careers do, it evolved from just public relations and just media placements into branding and marketing and integrated communication strategies where you're doing social media and media placements and telling brand stories and figuring out who their audiences are and how to connect with them and what they want to hear. And over the course of the past 13 years, I've worked at small agencies. I've worked with major companies, Fortune 500 companies, local nonprofits, all the way up to the NFL. Like it's been really, really interesting to have my hands on the branding stories and the communication strategies of every type of company with every type of audience and every type of goal. And then eventually, skipping ahead, I moved down to Charlotte, which is a phenomenal city, from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Go Birds. And I love this city. I love the companies. I love the landscape of the city. And I briefly worked for the tourism board of Charlotte to attract, again, storytelling, working to attract visitors, to attract businesses, to attract people to the city and tell the story of Charlotte in the way that I love it, the way that I see it, and get that out there. So that engagement ended. I briefly moved to Charleston. This is becoming very long-winded. I ended up seeing the job that was posted for this employer brand strategy right before I moved back to Charlotte from Charleston.
Okay.
Got connected with you guys, with Accrue, and it was just from there. It was full steam ahead. It was a phenomenal experience. It was great. Just it was so interesting, and I'm getting ahead of myself again, but I have to say it was so interesting seeing how you took a position that didn't really exist. You saw the need with the client and you were able to say, this is what you need. This is what we can provide. And this will be the outcome, the solution. And it was just such a refined process seeing that happen from my side of things. And now we're here. So that was
Well, and I mean, that was supposed to be like a 90-day engagement, and now we're 9 months into
9 months
it.
in. Yeah.
So, obviously, your theater is coming out in some of this, which is fantastic. Your storytelling, because you do have to storytell employer branding. You have to speak to the audience, and all companies have a different audience because all employee roles and titles look different, feel different, have different requirements. Some are in corporate, some are in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Some may be, in your own city or state. Some may be across the U.S. and some may be across the globe. And then you have to speak to the cultures of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess when you think about building people, companies, and careers, one, that's our tagline at AccruePartners. Two, that's the name of the podcast that we have. What comes to mind to you with that? Because it does speak to employer branding. What comes to mind?
It does speak to employer branding, and I love it because it's your tagline. It's also essentially your EVP. You're telling potential, it's not necessarily, well, potential employees, but also potential consultants that you'll be working with who AccruePartners is. And I love it. I love that it communicates the full scope of things. You can't build companies without building people, and you
Right.
can't build people without a defined career path. So what you've done is you've taken what this tagline does is it takes all of it, every angle. It's saying we are serving the people, we're serving the companies, and we're helping everyone grow. Everyone is growing from what AccruePartners is doing. And I think that tagline perfectly conveys that. It communicates it so well. And it just, it's all encompassing.
Yeah. So I guess taking a little bit of a step back, you told the story for the tourism board. Now you've launched into this employer branding space. I know our CPO client has seen a significant amount of value in what you're doing. Been lots of surprises that she did not know existed
Mm-hmm.
necessarily in some of the work that you were doing. But I guess give us a quick elevator pitch if someone were to say, "Hey, Lauren, what are you doing as an employer brand consultant?" What is that?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So I would say it is, you think of consumer branding, consumer marketing. And what that is essentially selling your product or service to your ideal consumer. Employer branding is the other side of the coin. Instead of selling a product or a service, you're selling your company as a place to work and grow, building people, companies, and careers. And what an employer value proposition does is it communicates who you are, again, as an employer, what it will be like to work for your company. And its ultimate mission is to attract the best fits and the right people for your mission. You can have the best, say, software developer in the world, and everyone wants a good software developer in the tech space. But that software developer may not be someone who aligns with a certain company's values. So what an employer brand, an employer value proposition does is it helps that software developer determine a company that will be a good fit for them, and it helps the company define what a good fit, what a good employee looks like. So it
Right.
helps both sides. It gives almost like a rubric for what what an ideal employee looks like, what a career at this company will look like, and it's a way to authentically communicate what a job at a certain organization or
Yeah,
company
because
is.
I would think often most companies think of a company just based on the name and what resonates with them, but they don't know anything underneath.
Yes. Yeah.
So you started in a newly created job. They didn't have it. They kind of knew what they needed. You started.
Mhm.
Like, share with us some of the pieces that you had to pull together because there wasn't a roadmap for you to go by.
There was
Talk to us a little bit about that process. And if other companies are listening to this podcast,
Mhm.
what are the things that they need to take into account when considering a role of this and the impact it can make?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this role, to your point, was very interesting. It was created and started within a month. So there was no foundation. I came in and some teams knew what we were going to be doing. Other teams didn't necessarily. So the first layer of this was selling all of the internal teams on what we were going to be doing. We had HR and recruiting absolutely on board. They know that they need to attract talent and they know that they need to attract the right talent in order to retain talent. But there's the marketing team, there's the communications teams, there's the operations team. And before we could even get started on anything, because an employer brand is all encompassing and completely immersive, we needed to get everyone else on board. And because this started so quickly, everyone wasn't necessarily on board yet. So the first thing to do with employer branding is get everyone on board. But then after that, you need to pull from every department. Every single team, every department has a different idea and a
Right.
different perspective and perception of what their employer is. Working on a marketing team is going to be very different than working in the field or working in a warehouse. And each one of those components matters in ultimately telling the story of the brand. So the first step in any process, any branding process, not just employer branding, is determine what your messaging is. What are we trying to communicate? And in order for an employer brand to determine what you're trying to communicate, you need to look at your company values, your company goals, your mission, your vision, and then what are honestly your perks? What are the things that are important to you that you value and that you give your employees? Are you someone who says we love animals, bring your pets to the workplace? Is that a top value for you? Are you someone it's a very family oriented company, so good family health care is something that you're prioritizing? Those are the beginning pieces of the pillars that will eventually inform your employer brand strategy and the message you're trying to convey.
Yeah. So curious. Um, did you find that there were any conflicting messages internally that you had to, I guess, refine the edges of, address some conflict, get people on the same page?
Yes, a lot. There were quite a few conflicting messages. There were some internal teams who didn't really see the point in working on gearing messaging towards potential employees.
Mhm.
There were some people in various positions who felt that keeping things happy, positive, glossing over anything negative publicly is the way to go. Don't and that is an approach a lot of companies, a lot of brands will take. Just don't look at the bad, only talk about the good.
Right.
In my opinion, that is just going to attract the wrong people and increase turnover. You might get lucky every once in a while, but if you're not communicating what it's actually like to work someplace, when people start the job, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be thrown off because it's not meeting an expectation that
Yes.
they subconsciously held.
Well, and I always say, you have to be as advertised. You don't want to advertise one thing and someone show up and the company be something completely different.
Absolutely.
Because now you've just recruited, interviewed, and hired someone that's likely going to leave, and back to your point of turnover.
And it starts even from that first day. You think it's going to look one way, you start the job, you go home, and even if it isn't bad, if your expectation is one thing and what you experience is different, there's something.
Something's not right.
There's a misalignment.
Right.
And you'll go home and you'll feel bamboozled or duped and wonder, like, how was I so wrong about this? Is this even a good fit? It's just even a difference in expectation and reality can sour a relationship from day one with a new employee. So authenticity is the most important thing. Authenticity works better if you're a company that has a good internal employee structure, if you're already treating your employees well, if there's already good there and you don't have to kind of develop an internal culture first. But if there's a good internal culture, all you have to do is communicate it. Tell the story of your company. Tell the story that you want people to hear, and the right people will hear that and think, that's someplace I would like to work. And that's how you attract the talent that's right for you.
Yeah. So you started, everything was new. You were trying to get ingrained with the team. You were sitting at corporate. You were a little bit hybrid. You're a little bit remote. That's a whole other story we'll get to. But getting ingrained with the team was really important. But corporate had a brand or not, and field did not. So talk to us a little bit about that, because just because one has it doesn't mean the other does.
Yeah. So that is absolutely true. Corporate, it wasn't necessarily a developed employer brand. They have a very, very, very strong consumer brand. Airtight. They know exactly what they're doing there. Everyone on the consumer side in the external world knows what they're doing there. Everyone knows the brand. The employer side, there wasn't much developed, but the support center did have, they had the makings. They had pieces. They knew what they wanted to communicate to the corporate employees, potential corporate employees. Unfortunately, with this specific company, the majority of their workforce is in the field. So when they were talking about what it's like to work for them, they were highlighting more what it's like to work in the support center, which is a handful of people. And it's a fun, playful startup culture. But the field, that doesn't translate. That doesn't carry over there, because when you're sitting in a corporate office with computers, you are having a much different experience than when you're out in public, say, serving or selling goods. So even the little bit of employer brand development that did exist was fully geared towards that support center corporate staff. And there is, frankly, a huge disparity between what it's like to work in a corporate office and what it's like to work in the field. And the challenge here is telling the story of what it's like to work for this company without alienating one side.
Right, because everybody's important.
Everybody's
They bring
important.
something different.
They're just experiencing different things.
Yeah.
So a major kind of perk that corporate companies offer is summer Fridays. So if you say on your website, oh, we do summer Fridays for our employees, but then 80% of your workforce is in the field not getting summer Fridays, it creates, there's an us versus them that kind of subconsciously develops.
Yeah.
It's, okay, they're allowed to go home early on a Friday, but we're still working in the field and it's hot, and what is that? And it builds, it's not good for building a team, it's good for dividing a team.
And I would think that, when you say this, this is in the retail area, if you will, but distribution companies would have this, manufacturing, healthcare. If you think about it, you have a corporate office, but then you have people at hospitals and nurses that are around the clock.
Yeah.
So it's almost most industries
Absolutely.
that need to look at it. It just may look a little bit different.
Mhm.
So you were focused on, it sounds like the project was predominantly focused on field employees where the majority of the workforce sits. It sounds as if they were having a challenge in hiring and
Mhm.
attracting the right people. And your job was to come in and go, okay, where's our employer brand broken?
Mhm.
What do we need to do to fix it? And so, kind of take us through that journey, what you did, and what some of the positive outcomes have been
Mhm.
today, 9 months later.
Yeah. Even building on what you were saying, even what are we saying was a question that existed. What do these different groups of potential employees care about and what will resonate with them? Is Summer Fridays, to go back to the previous example, something that someone in a shop would even care about? Or do we want to push the fact that, say, there's weekly pay or there's free healthcare? And it's you have to evaluate the different wants and needs of your different audiences. As with any marketing, there will be multiple audiences, and the challenge that exists is speaking to both of them without speaking to none of them. I guess,
Right.
like, speaking you want it needs to be all encompassing while also acknowledging that there is a divide and there is a difference. So, you asked about specifically attracting field employees because the support center, the corporate side was a little more developed. And that is definitely part of it. But what was so interesting and challenging about this project was that we were simultaneously trying to do recruitment marketing to attract those field employees while also developing an overarching employer brand. So when you look at brand development and brand strategy, the the first things that you need to do are, again, figure out what are we trying to say, what are our messages, and who are we trying to talk to. So technically, the employer brand strategy, the EVP, should be developed to inform the recruitment marketing. And we had the challenge, it was honestly, I say challenge, but it's really fun. Like it's not a challenge in a bad way. It's a challenge in a let's figure out how to do this way.
Right.
And the challenge of simultaneously determining what are we saying, why are we saying it this way, what are our primary values, and then how can we take this and retool it at the same time to actively attract. What are our ads saying, our tactics? Like what are we doing to directly speak to and connect with these field employees? So it was that the overarching storytelling alongside the active attracting tactics, and that has made it a very, very unique experience. So the first thing that I did that you would do in a situation like this to start figuring out what the messaging
Where
is
to start. Yeah.
exactly is talk to people.
Mhm.
You come in as a consultant. I'm not part of the team. All of these people have been working on this team for honestly, there's a lot of long tenured people at this company. So have conversations, determine what matters to different people. If I say to them, I'm your friend, I'm looking for a job, sell me on your company. What are the top 3 things that they say? Because that tells you what their values are. That tells you what to them resonates the most. And after you have enough of these conversations and talk to enough of these people in different spaces, you kind of get a scatter plot of messaging. A lot of people say they really enjoy the flexibility, and that is mirrored on the corporate side and the field side. So it's like, okay, immediately flexibility, that's a strong key message. Let's build off of that.
Mhm.
And you go from there. We have sort of developed it so that there are overarching messages that speak to who the employer is for everyone and also little sub messages for different audiences. So what we're saying technically to a prospective field employee is communicating the same overarching message, but we're saying it differently. If the message is, to give you an example, we care about our people, the field employees are hearing we have an employee reimbursement program. We prioritize our employee education. We have defined career paths. That's a message that says we care about our people, but appeals to a field audience. Whereas the corporate side might be more interested in summer Fridays. We have flexible time off. We have
Right.
pets, like all of, and that's a little fluffier. There's obviously more that each side cares about, but you take that overarching message and whittle it down to communicate what matters to the people that need to hear it. And that's that first step. To name some other companies that do this well, Starbucks, Chipotle, they do it phenomenally. They are very, very people oriented in their employer brand marketing. They are very Starbucks. I say this probably once a week to someone at this organization that I'm in now. Every 16-year-old, 17-year-old, you ask them where they want their first job to be, 1 in 5, that's a completely random statistic, is going to say Starbucks because they have made it a point to communicate with that audience. They know baristas and customer service workers who are maybe going into college, getting their first job, the tuition reimbursement is going to be really attractive to them, or the fact that you come home on Christmas break and we'll have a job for you for a month.
Right.
And it's they've built their system, they've built their employment system in such a way that it appeals to this audience.
So when you started this engagement, you obviously didn't know too much about employer branding. Obviously, you can speak to it now and who does it good, and you've probably found the ones that who don't. But talk to us a little bit about what research you had to do, because clearly our client had a gap. They were hiring you for your expertise and some of your research to then pull all this messaging together. What are some things that you did to identify what good looks like?
Mm-hmm. I love that question because I love research. Research, that is one of my favorite pieces of putting together a strategy, is looking at what exists first and foremost, the big picture. What is anyone saying? What is anyone doing? That is people in our space, but any companies in any space who have developed an employer brand. What are they saying? And then after looking at the general employer brand work that other companies are pushing out, so that's, what social media accounts are they talking about this on? Are they more focused on their product or their people? What is their messaging? Do they have, you know, articles on their recruitment page, or is their recruitment page just a list of jobs? So all of these little things kind of tell you what they're trying to do and what approach they're taking to do it successfully. So after looking at all of those big picture items, you take a step back and you look at what people are saying about them. So former employees, Glassdoor and Indeed are a great place to start looking at organizations and reviews, but as with any review, disgruntled people are going to leave reviews more frequently than happy employees. That's just the nature of reviews. So that's a good starting point. But then I like to dig into social media and look at TikTok and TikTok comments. Like, you search, say your brand is, I'll use Starbucks again. Say your brand is Starbucks. You search working at Starbucks on TikTok and you see some TikToks of employees at work. You get an idea of what they're doing on the day to day. And then where it gets really fun is in the comments, when people will start saying things like, oh, this was the best job I ever had, or don't ever work there. It was terrible. I lasted 2 days. And then that starts telling you, okay, is the experience in alignment with the story they're telling? Reddit is another good one. When there's anonymity, people are significantly more likely to speak their mind and tell the truth about their experience working at places. And then again, you start looking at the lists, best places to work for, most sustainable companies to work for, and the people on that. You have to pitch yourself to be on those lists. There's no one out here writing an article about most sustainable companies that isn't saying, hey, submit your company as a candidate for most sustainable and we'll evaluate. So from the very beginning, even being on that list, regardless of where you are, means that someone on your communications team or your marketing team took the time and the initiative to apply to be on this list,
Right.
which tells you that's a value of theirs. So there's just so many different ways to determine what other people are doing, how they're doing it, what's working, and then kind of reverse engineer it with what I was just saying.
Try some.
Exactly. What people on your team and your company are talking about, and saying, okay, this worked for them, but it won't work for us because we don't have good sustainability practices. So it's like, it's just, you kind of look at the tactics, you look at the success, and you look at how it's received by the actual audiences, and you go from there.
Yeah.
Super
So
fun.
I remember at lunch probably 6 months ago, maybe not that long ago, you mentioned you had to hire a photographer. I'm like, why are you hiring a photographer? And I thought it was really interesting. You didn't have pictures or photography, if you will, that spoke to the field employee. So back to manufacturing, distribution, retail, healthcare, speaking to the corporate employee, whether it's accounting, IT, marketing, or HR, is one subset of photography in how that shows up versus the people in the field. Um, talk to us a little bit about that. And were there any other assets or platforms or technologies that the company didn't have in order for you to accomplish your goal?
Yeah. So the photographer was essential because not only did they not have any pictures that spoke to working in the field, the the consumer brand that they have in place was inherently not people driven. So there weren't pictures of employees, pictures of people at all, because it wasn't the story that the consumer side was trying to tell. To them, it's completely about the product. It's completely about moving the product and making the product appealing to buyers. But because people aren't part of their brand, like it is with a Starbucks or a Chipotle or Disney is another one that they're very people oriented. There's people that work at Disney.
Right.
This brand, this company, it wasn't a priority for their consumer side. So we had to go in and take pictures of the various field positions so that when we start communicating and start telling these stories about what it's like to work here, there's visuals. Because, I mean, just logistically and technically speaking, visuals are going to go farther on social media. And people are more likely to get a feeling from a picture than a block of words. So we can talk till we're blue in the face about how great it is to work for this company, but if people aren't seeing it in action through visuals, through video, through pictures, then it's just more work.
Yeah. I would imagine a lot of companies have a disconnect between the employer brand at corporate and just assuming, oh, we have all this. We've taken pictures of our office and all these other glitzy and glamoury things and thinking that it's a one size fits all. And in reality, it's not. So the message could be there. If you're having a hard time finding field employees or employees that don't sit in your traditional corporate office, there could be an opportunity to bring someone on in an employer branding perspective to really shore that gap up. Because even as a heart of a market that we are currently in, recruiting is still very hard to get the right person in the right audience to the jobs.
Yeah.
What have been some of the outcomes that you've been able to deliver because this has been really successful, which we're excited for, the client's excited for, and certainly it's hopefully been a great journey for you.
Yeah, it has. It's been really great. And we are still very much working on all of the development and all of basically the final answer. We're still playing around with the different pieces and, okay, will this be more effective or will this be more effective, and kind of measuring it and seeing what lands where. So we're still in the development phases of that. There's been I kind of mentioned it, some internal challenges with getting everyone on board. So
Yeah.
that first selling the project to the powers that be on the inside it took a lot of time.
But wasn't there, didn't you do something associated with social media? You got it out there. You found one or two pieces of stock photography that actually had a person in it.
Yeah.
And the analytics associated with that far exceeded the
Absolutely.
expectation.
Yes. Yeah. It's very, very early in that. We're still working through kind of approvals processes for social media, what social media platforms belong to the consumer side, what social media platforms belong to the employer side. Because as I mentioned, with this specific company, their consumer marketing doesn't want people. It's not part of it. So we need to kind of tread carefully with what we're saying and what we're doing and what we're pushing out there so as to stay in alignment with their brand strategy while also getting our messaging out there. But as far as what we have managed to get out and accomplish, there we've started working on LinkedIn, which is a very, very kind of obvious first step when it comes to talking about employer brand on social media. We just activated the LinkedIn Life section of LinkedIn, which is a new addition that LinkedIn has. And I think it's great for employer brand specifically because it's not just about the company. LinkedIn is a networking platform at the end of the day. So a lot of company content will be about, annual reports and Q4 earnings, and here's something that we did, employee spotlights, things like that. It's polished. The LinkedIn Life tab of LinkedIn allows you to be a little more authentic and not as polished, for lack of a better word. You can really give insight into the day to day. You can include videos. You can prioritize what you want to talk about. This company has a phenomenal internship program that they've been developing and is about to start this year. And we're working on kind of documenting the journey of what that internship, this is brand new, what that internship program looks like. So it starts at the end of May, right after Memorial Day. And they bring in a handful of people who are applying now, interviewing now. And over the course of the summer, 3 months, they'll get their hands on every component of the business and what it's like to work in marketing, what it's like to work in the innovation section, what it's like to create product and market product and all of that. And we're going to be documenting that along the way. So next year, when it comes time to attract interns, we have this full story
to tell.
exactly.
Mhm.
And they do this really great thing where, in addition to these recent college graduates and rising college juniors and seniors, opening it up to them, they also open it up to their field employees. And with the corporate office being here in Charlotte, they say, if you work in our location in Kansas City and you want to come do this internship program, you're welcome to apply. Your job will be waiting for you when you get back in your field position, but come to corporate for 10 weeks, 12 weeks and experience it on this side. And then it goes back to the what I said at the beginning of our conversation, which is established career paths. That's something that matters to people, and the ability to go from, working as a cashier in the field to coming to corporate and working alongside the marketing team and seeing what goes into the product that you're selling on the day to day. It simultaneously helps the company because now there's more investment in the field side, but it also helps this cashier in this case figure out what they might want their next steps to be. What does my career look like from here?
Yeah,
What
give some options that they may
exactly?
not have thought about. But then on the corporate side, it could give someone an opportunity to really see firsthand what happens in the field,
Mhm.
right? And I know that there's a lot of companies that do require people spend time in the field so that you understand what those
Yeah.
individuals are going through, what's important to them, the challenges,
Mhm.
and the like. Yeah,
It's invaluable. It's just having that everyone's perspective matters, and having that perspective in the corporate office where the marketing team say they're working on something, they can go up to this intern now who's here for 10 weeks and has been working as a cashier in one of the shops for however long and say, what is your experience? What sells well? What does well? What do people walk in and say, oh my gosh, that's
right.
really cool? That'll help them be more informed about, it's just everyone working together, collaboration and just all working towards the same goal, regardless of your background. Different perceptions and different perspectives are the most important thing when it comes to weaving a comprehensive story.
Right. So, what advice would you give other companies that may be listening to this and thinking, we have a problem, or
Mhm.
hey, we may have a problem, or we need to address this gap, what would be some advice you would give them?
It's gonna be blunt, but if you feel like you may have a problem, you probably do.
Probably have a
If
problem.
you're experiencing difficulty recruiting, you're not getting good candidates, you have a high turnover, you find that the resumes you're receiving aren't in alignment with the job you're hiring for, there's a messaging breakdown somewhere. You're either not communicating correctly or effectively, or you're not communicating to the right people, or you're not n appealing as an employer in your current state, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, and compared to the competition, what
Yeah.
is competition doing that they are not doing?
Exactly, and as at year over year and year after year, you see more and more companies prioritizing employer branding.
Mhm.
And quite frankly, if you are an employer who wants to scale and grow and have good people, you need to have some sort of focus or some sort of strategy in place for your employer brand. If someone says to you, who are you, elevator pitch, who are you as an employer, and you can't answer, you just say, oh, it's a great place to work.
No,
I'm not
no.
sold. Who's
Yeah.
who's sold on that? Because there's other people, like Google is another one. Their employer brand is so everyone, regardless of industry, I think. Maybe it's just me because I'm in this space now, but everyone knows what it's like to work at Google. You know what that culture is like. And that can't be the case for every company.
Well, and I would think smaller companies, mid-market companies that aren't name brand, right?
Yeah,
Companies that aren't name brand, they probably have even a greater
even more
challenge,
important.
than the companies that are household
Yeah.
names, as I would call them.
Yeah.
What is the one thing within HR or talent acquisition now that you've been exposed to it? What has been the one surprise or the one like, oh wow, that you weren't expecting?
Everyone is so nice. Everyone is nice. Everyone is people oriented. Everyone is actually working towards the success of their department and of their team. I come from, as you know, a marketing background, a public relations background. Those teams historically are not as collaborative. There's more of a like a cutthroat, every man for himself, do not wanting to share for threat of, not getting the spotlight or not getting the credit for doing something. I think not to get too psychological, but I think the people who are drawn to marketing are just typically the people who want to like really just drive it home and be accomplished and be the best in the room. Whereas the people who are drawn to recruiting and HR and this side care about people. It's not about the product like it is for marketing. It's
Yeah.
about the employee experience. It's about the people. I I have never been on such a helpful and resourceful, and because that's the other thing, they don't get nearly the resources that a marketing team gets. Like
Mhm.
it's
And without people, they have nothing.
without people no company has anything. Like people everyone forgets that you can do the best marketing in the entire world, but if someone comes into your shop and there's no employees working there, or there's bad employees working there, there's going to be disparity between your consumer brand and the consumer experience.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the HR teams, the recruiting teams understand that, and they are doing everything they can to to work with what they're given.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I never want to
So
go
it
back.
sounds like you're gonna stay in employer
I
branding.
absolutely am. It's great. And it's so niche that there aren't it's such a niche space in marketing. It lives between marketing and recruiting. So there's just not many people, many companies who even know that it's something that they need. So getting to kind of come into a company from square one and see the need and then build it's so fulfilling and rewarding and impactful, immediately impactful. You can see from one day to the next how it makes a difference not one day to the next, 1 month to the next, how it makes a difference, starting to focus on, because even employees, people I talk to internally, when I tell them what project we're working on, they'll be like, oh, I'm so glad someone's finally talking about this. No one knows what it's like. No one knows what it's actually like here. People need to know that we're not just another retail company. Like, we treat our employees better, differently, and everyone, all the employees, everyone I talk to gets it and sees the need. It's kind of selling it to the powers that be that is where the
That the
disconnect is.
message needs to get out.
Yes.
So you've been a consultant here. I think you were a consultant once before. We always tell our clients and candidates that, when you work as a consultant, it gives you an opportunity to do different things. Like, right, if you had not been available for this engagement, there's a lot that you wouldn't have had exposure to and had found a liking and or a love for, it sounds like. But what is it that you do like about being a consultant?
So much. I think I think what stands out, my favorite thing that comes to mind immediately is you don't have to play it safe as much. It's when you're on a team, it's your full-time job, you're in a position to do a position. There's kind of this tendency to play things safe, keep it close to the chest. You don't want to rock the boat, even if you may know that something might be the right way to do something or might need to change. This company I'm with now, there's so many people, like I just said,
Right.
who say there's a need for this, but no one wants to be the person to push back on marketing or the higher ups or anything. So I get to be in this really great position of getting to come in, knowing that they brought me on because they know there's a need here, and tell it like it is. I get
You
to
can be
just
the unpopular voice.
exactly. If there's something that someone needs communicated, but they don't want to be the one to say it because they're nervous about their job, I can come in and explain that to people. And there's a level of respect
Mhm.
almost that someone has, like when you're an expert that they're bringing in rather than just a team member who is probably being taken for granted, possibly being taken for granted.
Right.
There's, I think, more of an inclination to trust in the process and
Right.
listen to what you're being advised to do, because it's like, you're paying for this. You're paying for this project. I have been brought in here to help you succeed here because I know how to succeed here. And I think there's more trust. I really like that. And it's great because y- I get to learn from so many different people.
Right.
I'm talking to not just my team, because I don't technically have a team. I'm floating around working with different people, having conversations with different people, and just the way that an operations person sees things versus an IT person versus a comms person. It's conversations you wouldn't necessarily have when you're siloed in a team like you are in a full-time corporate environment. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's like your full-time team it's the meal. It's when you go to a restaurant, it's the meal, it's the food that comes out. But the consultant, my position, I get to come in and I get to be the condiments. Like, I get to be, I'm not the fried chicken, but I'm the dip. I enhance it. It's an enhancement to the existing team that you have in place. And I think it's a really good balance to have an outside perspective come in and inform the people who are in the day-to-day and know everything perfectly.
Well, and I think with that is you have a good executive sponsor internally,
She's
and
phenomenal.
someone has to be that person. So you do get the liking and respect of others,
Mhm.
but you're there to solve a problem and for the gap that they have.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's super exciting to see all the impact that you have, but we probably should move to rapid fire.
Okay.
And wrap this up in a moment. So I guess share with us, what is your first career memory?
I thought about this and I didn't want to tell this story because it's embarrassing, but it is genuinely my first career memory. And I can't sit here for an hour and talk about the importance of authenticity and branding and then not be authentic with my story. So it was my first job after college. I was doing the marketing for a small financial services firm in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And we went to a Thai restaurant for lunch my first day. First day of work, they took me out. It was a husband and wife that owned the company, very family oriented. And I'd never had Thai before. And I was nervous. So the waitress, oh gosh, the waitress comes up to the table and she's asking what everyone wants to order. And she gets to me and I chose the pad Thai. It seemed like the safest thing. I'd never had Thai.
And how many stars did you want?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I didn't know. I thought I wanted a 2. I did not want a 2. I want the most mild, but that's not even. That was after the fact. She says, "Okay, pad Thai," and I say, but without the scallions, please. I'm allergic to seafood." And everyone at the table just kind of looked at me and I didn't know what I said wrong. I was like, "What? Why is everyone looking at me?" And I sat there and I felt so awkward for the rest of the meal. It came out way too spicy. And then I got back to the office and I was like, "Oh my God, scallions or green onions." I thought it was scallops. I thought they were going to put scallops in my food. And I said I'm allergic to seafood about green onions. I was mortified. I think about it all the time. Every time I see the word scallions to this day, I think of that first day and just how, do they regret hiring me because I don't know what a scallion is? Like I was, I was 22 years old and I know what a scallion is now.
Well, that's pretty funny. All right, so tell us your best and or worst boss. You don't have to name them.
Okay.
But the experience.
It's kind of not counting my sponsor here, who I absolutely adore. If she counted as a boss, she would be by far my best boss ever. But disregarding her, my best boss and my worst boss were the same person.
Oh,
It was
tell
the
us more.
same person. It was when I was in Philly, I worked at an agency. I was there for just under 4 years, and it was extremely small boutique agency. We did a lot of we had got a lot of really big contracts. That's where I worked with the NFL on the NFL draft and FIFA and just like all these really great companies, but we were very, very small but mighty. And there was a time about probably 2 years, a year into my tenure there, where everyone either quit or got fired at the same time. So it was just me and my boss for a really long time in this office, just working alone together constantly. And she was and is the most brilliant person I have ever worked for. She taught me every single thing that I know about strategy and how to build a strategy and how to be effective. She was also very difficult to work with. She was a creative,
Mhm.
but not necessarily like a people person. And I was young and learning. So she'd get very frustrated with me. And we were around the same age. And we would like bicker back and forth a lot. And it was a classic agency experience, which anyone who knows working in a creative agency knows that things can get chaotic fast. But there's just 2 of us in this room all day, every day. The air conditioning didn't work sometimes. And we would bicker. We would bicker honestly like sisters. But I would not be where I am today if it wasn't the bickering honestly kind of helped me because she would tell me like, "Lauren, this is dumb. This doesn't make
Well, she
any
didn't
sense."
beat around the bush.
What she did at all. And I wasn't used to that. I was like, I wasn't little. I was probably 27 at the time.
Well, so
But
you killed 2 birds with one stone.
yeah, absolutely. And again, she was so taught me everything I know, but
Yeah.
difficult.
All right. Well, that's a great one. So, what saying are you known for?
Perception is reality.
Well, back to employee
Yep,
branding.
and that's what it is, and I say it all the time, and it's true. Perception is reality. What people think and what their opinion of you is ultimately going to inform more or do more harm or good than reality.
Right.
So, be authentic because if they're perceiving you correctly, perception you don't want that discrepancy, but
Yeah. Okay, that's great. And then lastly, final question of rapid fire. What is your favorite restaurant?
probably right now, Everandolo in
Oh, I've
Noda.
never heard of it.
Oh my gosh, it's in Noda. It's an Italian restaurant. It's best Italian restaurant in Charlotte, in my opinion. And the atmosphere is phenomenal. It's small and it's cozy and it kind of reminds you of your grandma's house in Italy. And the food is
All right, do they take reservations?
Yes, you're gonna want to make one
Don't.
in advance. Yeah, and brunch. Their brunch is.
Oh.
I had it for the first time last week. I had these. They were strawberry ricotta pancakes. Oh my gosh,
Wow.
I haven't stopped thinking.
Then you go home and take a nap.
Yeah, yeah, and I did, and I did.
So, all right. Well, Lauren, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast of Building People, Companies, and Careers. And we're excited to see what the journey is forward and hopefully have another opportunity to work with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amy. This has been great. You're an amazing interviewer and conversationalist, and this has been so fun. So
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.